It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays. And today we are talking sleep versus rest. What? It's the same thing. No, it's not. No, it's not. If you do not give yourself enough rest, it will affect your sleep. And I am bad for this. This is something I keep having to remind myself. It is a constant, white knuckle ride telling myself to slow down. And it's tough when I'm doing Leanna Care sessions, the one-on-one stuff, because, I want to squeeze that one extra person in. But that means I don't get a break during the day. And you can actually overload your brain when it's go, 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 and not enough downtime before you start going to sleep at night. And so then what do? You hit the caffeine and you go more caffeine, and that gives you issues sleeping. And welcome to any, creative endeavor where you have to do editing or anything on a computer, right? And we talk a lot about sleep as a society. Arianna Huffington popularized that. We have not talked enough about rest. So I want to talk about rest. And if you like this content, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. And of course, It's Not Therapy Bubbles, open now. Link in the description box to check out the offerings. Our first one starts maybe this Friday. We might push it because of US Thanksgiving. We'll see. But sign up and fill out the form if you see something that looks interesting to you, but you want it at a different time. Okay. So, what happens and our lives used to be slower and less constantly engaged. You ever just, with me, I hide in the bathroom, it's a crazy day and you just go to the bathroom and close the door and just stand there and just breathe for a bit. Give your brain a rest. No, just me. Okay, some people take walks during the day, but it's those moments where your brain is slowing down and processing. Not on your phone, not on your computer, nothing, just processing. Little breaks, daydreamy breaks. People think that when you're engaged constantly, every minute of the day, you're never bored, you're never just doing nothing, that's being productive. But our brains are designed to have breaks in tasks and concentration. Our brains are built for bursts, not massive marathons of concentration, unless of course you have ADHD and then neurodivergent, right? But even then, people with ADHD do get overloaded. It's all about figuring out what works optimally for you. Remember, here we optimize, we don't normalize. What works optimally for you, and being able to set boundaries so you can work that way. Because if you don't, your brain goes into survival mode. It gets overloaded and it goes into survival mode. And then you start craving sugar and junk food. There's been a lot of people saying, I need pizza right now. Pizza for me is such a fucking stress food. I don't know why. It's just the salt and the bread and, the carb load. And then, and it's bad for me. A little bit. Okay, there's these Farm Boy flatbreads. They're like spinach and mushroom, and I think it's like feta cheese or something like that. But that's just enough. It's a thin crust, and it's not a huge portion. I'm okay with that. And I've got one of those in my freezer all the time, because if I'm, ordering, oh boy, I'm overloaded. And yeah, I do days where it's like start at 9, finish at 8. Um, if just 8. I mean, Twitch, I finish sometimes at, I finish 9 or 10 o'clock. Then it's 9 o'clock the next day. Then I work till 8. Then it's 9 o'clock the next day and I work till 8. That's my Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday every week. And so Friday's my catch up day. And then the weekends, I have to have breaks. I need to slow down because otherwise I cannot sleep. I can't sleep for more than 90 minutes at a time. My brain will not switch off because it's go, go, go. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? You know? And it's good to be able to do that when you have to do it. But, you know, you can't do it too long or you get sick, you get worn out, you get brain fog. I really had to be more disciplined because of the long COVID because the brain fog was brutal. And the only way to be productive at all was to slow the hell down. And that's why when we talk about sleep, yeah, sleep's really important. It's really important that you're getting that, deep sleep and you're getting quality sleep, not just quantity of sleep. If you're napping a lot of times during the day, it may be throwing off your sleep schedule, but rest is also really important. Don't be lazy, right? People know it's hard to judge, right? I'd say people know if you're being lazy, but it is hard to judge because, I take a half day off. I feel like I'm being lazy, but I do it because fuck. That's the thing I sort of lost when I stopped reviewing video games all the time because that sort of built in every so often. Oh, okay, I have to play this game. But for me, it's the correspondence. It's the getting back to people. It's constantly making sure I don't miss an email. I don't, leave somebody waiting, something like that. It is just, I cannot turn my brain off. And I have to watch it because if you don't get enough rest, then you don't sleep properly. And if you don't sleep properly, you start to spiral, right? Into fatigue, into poor productivity, into emotional dysregulation, and into physical sickness. And the problem is, well, two main problems. One, we all have to push it sometime, right? Crunch is a thing in life. Sometimes you just got to be there for that friend or you got to get that task in. Every so often, okay. But if that's your normal, it's affecting your sleep, right? But then there's the thing about boundaries and that feeling that we need to be constantly busy. And I know, I saw this in certain female family members. They would never sit down, right? If there was one butter knife in the sink, they'd have to wash it before they sat down. It was constantly busy. And then you'd complain, then you'd hear the complaining about they're not sleeping, the aches and pains, but trying to get them to sit down and just chill for a half hour. Freaking impossible. And then you'd get the passive aggressive, no one appreciates me, and they're throwing things in the sink. And what's wrong? Nothing. Can't stand that. And people don't see how they're doing it to themselves. They think they're being forced to. But except in situations where you're living with somebody abusive, no one is really going to care if that one fork or that one knife doesn't get washed until the next day. All right? Put it in the dishwasher, leave it for the next load, right? That's what the dishwasher is for if you have a dishwasher. But I saw that habit growing up. And so when I'm not doing something that kicks in of, oh, you're being lazy. And my thought is, okay, no, I am processing. I am catching up. I am giving my brain that break. So when I sit down and I have to write dialogue, or I have to write, the radio show for the week, or I can actually write and not just stare at a screen for 2 hours locked up, right? Especially since I slept better the night before. And I do need time because of, the client work I do, and the it's not therapy stuff. And also just with the complexity of some of the issues with, with sort of nerd stuff. I do have to sit and sometimes just noodle something. Okay, the traditional methods aren't working with a particular client. How can I adapt things to work for them instead of forcing them to have to adapt to the tool? Because more and more I'm learning that the conventional stuff that you get in regular talk therapy or the workbooks, they're not designed for neurodivergent people. And in some cases, they can cause more stress and more anxiety, more depression, because there's certain abstract concepts that aren't laid out. And so it's let things go, process things. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean to do that? We'll just process it. It's underpants gnomes, right? Step 1, collect underpants. Step 3, profit. What's step 2? And I think even people who don't have a diagnosis, it's a psychological muscle memory thing, right? So many things are, you need to experience the state of being a couple times before you know how to induce it. Because you can't get to a place that you don't know. So if somebody has been go, 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 pedal to the metal for a really long time, they don't know how it feels to relax. And I know in the months after I had COVID, when I was trying to sleep at night, my heart would start racing. It was the damnedest thing, So I cut out all the caffeine to make sure it wasn't that. I checked every single supplement I took to make sure it wasn't that. I even stopped consuming any alcohol, because even though that's a depressant, it's not. I thought, okay, maybe the lull is kicking off, and that's what's causing it. No, it wasn't. It was, I just needed to slow the fuck down. And let me tell you, when you are behind on projects because you got fucking COVID and was sick I got in July, so August, September, October, it seems madness, right? But in order to get anything done, you have to. And then you get into the issue of your environment, right? And that's a tricky bit that traditionally mental health, except for social workers are really good with addressing environmental issues, or at least they're aware of it. Sometimes there's only so much they can do. But usually they deal with the biology with medication. They deal with the psychology with, talk therapy and personal tools. But the boundaries just go completely neglected, and the environmental pressures aren't addressed. And so things just continue to stay unbalanced. Because it's true, a lot of people have, when you hit a point where you're aware you need help. It's you've got a lot of bad habits, and you can be surrounded by people who also have a lot of bad habits. And that process of cleaning up that mess can be extremely painful right when you can't take anymore. And that's part of the reason, we're trying out these little online Zoom groups to give people a support system. Even if it's just something as simple as you can, 90 minutes every so often, just be a person, not be defined by your struggle, not be defined by what your family thinks of you or your work thinks of you. You can just be a person where people take at face value and think you're cool because they like the same stuff as you do. And we have some basic sort of core values things here that people are likely to at least be able to have a fun conversation with each other because we have enough in common, right? That's the whole idea, is just giving people a break from either the monotony of their lives or the pressure cooker of an unhealthy environment. And we're going to have to figure out a way to subsidize those too. I really don't know how, because it's much more. And that's a big ask with people. But this is why it's in beta. And that's the thing. I wanted a lot of this stuff done way sooner, but I got sick. And it's because when I went through all this stuff circa, 2012, 2013, they were really adamant about sleep, how fundamental sleep was, but they didn't deal with rest. And it's frustrating, and yet on the other hand validating to have to stumble through and figure out that stuff yourself, and then find out there's actually neuroscience or documentation that you do need rest. And if you're not getting rest, no matter how much you sleep, you're gonna feel tired, right? And some people get used to constantly being tired. They just, caffeinate in the morning and caffeinate in the afternoon. And then I know people who drink coffee right before they go to bed. I have no idea how that works. But apparently 30s and 40 somethings are especially vulnerable to overtiredness. So I'm in that cohort too. I guess you're not as young as you used to be. You've got more stress. You've got your daily stuff, and you've got families and stuff like that, social life, all that stuff, as opposed to in your 20s when, yes, you're building stuff, but you don't have the same head of the family burdens. And then older people, you get into retirement or you just, I don't think you slow down as you get older because you get slower. You slow down as you get older because you realize it's important. And I know so many people who are so go, 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 go that they don't even have time to sit down and watch an hour of a show every week. You're way over programmed. And the funny thing is that the people who have kids and see that overtired children are a real thing, and see what happens when they get rangy and squirrely and won't power down when they get overtired, but they think that for whatever reason just stops when we hit adulthood. It doesn't. The brain is the brain. And I think that's interesting that we just, why? We have all these stupid myths about adulting and what it really means. And often when we talk about adulting, we talk about producing something for something external, right? Instead of being a self-actualized, individuated person with boundaries and goals. The latter is what adulting actually is. And if you spend all your time trying to please your family, your friends, your boss, you're never going to actually adult because you never have that time with your own thoughts. Slow braining, what do I want? What makes me happy? What makes me fulfilled? What makes me feel bad? You need that time interacting with things so that you can see yourself in other things and not see yourself in other things, and take the time to process and go, why did I love that? Why did that bother me? You know, I fortunately, have a lot of programs where I digest that, especially, Two Women Talking with Song and I, we do a lot of that stuff. We compare our perspectives on things. But that's what I don't see, that time for reflection. I don't see people doing it, and they're the ones losing it over stuff that really isn't that important. And I find that's another thing that rest gives you. It gives you perspective, right? When you're feeling centered, when you're feeling grounded, things get to you less. Not because you don't let them get to you. You are just naturally more resilient. And this is how this ties into Monday's video of, if you're going hardcore all the time, you're wearing down that resilience. That brake pad on your thoughts is wearing down to the point that it's metal on metal. And so you may feel like you're going, but you're going all over other people. Over the weekend, a friend of mine and I kind of compared notes on, someone we know in common who's going through a really, really tough time and is showing signs of PTSD. And, we both agreed that they're doing things, that we're seeing behaviors we don't like, but we know what's causing it. And so we're trying to figure out what to do, because they're not acting like the person we know they are, because they're just raw all the time. And when you've got those, those emotional injuries, when you're trying to run as fast as you can because it's so a lot, you do end up, being nasty to the Uber driver, or, being that guy in a restaurant, or, just being, you think you're right. You think you're making sense, but you're really just splashing your trauma all over everyone around you. And there's a difference between having reasons for it that are valid and using that to excuse the behavior, which it's not okay to treat people that way. It's not okay to force your opinion, force your perspectives on somebody. And I actually had a guy on Twitter, it was a few weeks ago, who didn't understand the concept that an opinion could be forced on someone. It had to be physical. You had to hold someone down. And it's like, no, somebody jumps into your mentions and sends you a nasty gram. You have to read it before you block the person, right? But this person just could not get their head around that idea. And I see that person, that's a person who is not meeting their own needs. And so they don't know their own boundaries. And so they can't understand other people's. And there are no shortcuts with this stuff. Anybody that says there's a way around this is probably trying to sell you something and not telling you the truth. They may not know the truth. They may believe there's a shortcut around this, but there isn't. You don't really respect other people's boundaries when you can't set your own, because you don't see them. You don't understand the concept. And so you may not be that pushy person, but you may be a person who's too averse to conflict, who's afraid to ask for anything because you don't want to be a burden, right? That's not healthy boundaries either. The people who care about you shouldn't see you as a burden. And yes, a lot of people's families made them feel like they were. I understand that. That's real. But that means your boundaries weren't respected growing up. And so not resting, not taking breaks, not giving that brain those pauses that they absolutely need, that is part of unhealthy boundaries. And people don't like hearing that, because slowing down means doing the thing that somebody with unhealthy boundaries is often trying to avoid, being alone with their own thoughts. It's really important to get okay with being alone with your own thoughts. Because if you can't, you end up being avoidant and dissociating. And the only way you get comfortable with your own thoughts is practicing sitting with them. And, even if that means just leaving your phone in another room for a period of time every day, right? Or just taking even 5 minutes, even a minute to start, and just closing your eyes, taking some deep breaths, just focus on your breath, listen to your breath. And what that means is, instead of going, oh my God, I have to do this. No, be really, really aware of the sensation and sounds of your breath going in. Yeah, I do the wine tasting thing when I do that, the aeration. So I kind of suck the air through my teeth so I feel it. So I'm focusing on that instead of whatever's going through my mind, and then the out again. Right? You'll feel the slowdown. Like, even with one cycle, you will feel the slowdown. And it can be scary at first because you haven't learned to be alone with your own thoughts. But it's an essential skill to build if you don't want to be the person nobody wants around. And it's funny because that's a fear a lot of people have. Oh, I'm going to be kicked out. I'm going to be thrown out. I'm going to be ostracized. Well, why do you think that? And part of it is bad past experiences, but part of it is, I think, on some level, people know that they are rude. They offend people. And sometimes you want to offend somebody. If you want to offend somebody, fine, that's a choice. Good for you. But if you're doing it without intending to, and you feel like you can't stop that, that's not true. You can't. You can learn. You have to want to. You have to want to put in the time. And when you're going and have no time for rest, you cannot make those behavioral and perception changes, because those are hard things to do. And if you're not blocking time to be good to yourself, it's just too hard. And it's certainly harder than it has to be, because you're burned out, because you're not resting. So there's a lot of important reasons to get rest. If you actually sit down and make a list and look at it from this perspective, you'll see that the benefits to rest outweigh the downside. And I'm not saying don't go and party like crazy one night. No, that's cool, right? It's when you start feeling run down and your brain is running too hot. Time to take some rest. I recommend God of War Ragnarok. It's so good. It's so good. All right. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it who can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. And check out It's Not Therapy Bubbles. Link in the description box below. Meet some new friends. Get some new perspective. Chat. Socialize with people, with faces, with voices. Thanks for watching and be well.